Hey everybody, how's it going? Drew Creal here. In this video, we're going to take a look at the Revv Generator 120. It's the 10th anniversary edition that we're checking out in this video. And I'm going to walk you through all of the different channels, all the quirks and features that this amp has to offer. It's an incredible amplifier, so if that sounds interesting to you, stick around. You're not going to want to miss this one. Alright guys, so the Revv Gen 120. Let me just briefly explain how I got my hands on this awesome piece of gear. So, I live in the Nashville area. I have a death metal band that was playing a show last week, and kind of in the weeks leading up to the show, I figured I would reach out to my friend Derek. I've known Derek for several years, and he's always been really kind to me and let me check out the amps from time to time, but I've never used one at a show. So I asked Derek, hey man, can I try a couple Revv amps for the Zaphon show coming up? And he was very kind and allowed us to borrow the amps. He let us use this 120 that we have here, as well as a Revv G120. They're both killer amps. But what I wanted to do in this video is just kind of walk through the different tones and kind of how I have this amp set up for anybody that's not familiar with Revv. So once again, I don't own this amp. Hopefully next year I'll get some money together and I can buy one of these because they're great. But I think they have some features and some things about this amp that shouldn't be ignored, and kind of sets Revv, in my opinion, above a lot of the stuff that's on the market. So before we plug in some guitars and hear what this thing sounds like, I just want to talk about the different features on this amp. So this amp has been around for about 10 years. This is the 10th anniversary edition. You can tell that it is because of the silver faceplate. The regular Revv Generator Mark III has like a black faceplate, and of course you can order these amps from Revv with, snake skin, Tolex. You can get pretty much anything that they have. Just reach out to them and ask. But this one is kind of like the stock 10th anniversary. So what they did with this particular amp is they found the best sounding Revv Mark IIIs and even some of the early Revv Generator 120s. So it's kind of like the best of the best that Revv has ever done, and they put those sort of tweaks and very nuanced things into this amp. So on the surface it looks the same as a normal Revv Gen 120, but really it's a much more highly refined version of that, and I believe there's only 200 of these available, so I consider myself to be very lucky to check this out. Right off the bat, the coolest thing about this amp is you can put any tubes that you want into it. You could do 6L6, KT88, or EL34s. I know that they ship with EL34s. That happens to be my favorite sounding power amp tube, but you can get anything you want put in when you order these amps. Or you could order it one way and then switch it over. Just make sure you get it biased by a tech and set up properly with like KT88s, for example. But it's a beast of an amp. It does like every tone, every, like, from pristine clean to blues guitar, jazz fusion shred, modern high gain. There's a really dry channel 3, the purple channel, which kind of helped Revv make a name for themselves with that channel. I play 8-string guitar, so that's why I love these amps. And then the red channel, which is kind of the ultimate lead channel. So what I like about Revv is you don't have to have like an audiology degree to dial these things in. They sound great right out of the gate, okay? And I can attest to that at a show. You're setting up all this equipment, you're running an IEM rig, maybe you're running some cameras or something. It's just a lot of things that can go wrong in a show, the last thing I want to do is dial the amp for the room. And if you're in a local band like me, you only have maybe a few minutes to do a sound check. You don't have, you know, hours before the gig to dial the amp to the room. So I find that the Revv amps are really easy to use compared to a lot of other amps on the market. And all of the settings that you could dial are usable, okay? Be careful of the bass knob and the depth knob on these two channels, the 3 and 4 channels. But in general, they're really easy to set up and use, which I appreciate. So as I mentioned before, there are 4 channels. Each one has its own independent EQ, and each one can be switched with the proprietary Revv foot switch, or there's built-in MIDI. So what I have done for this video is I've set up the XSonic Airstep to do all the channel switching like this, and even turn on and off the effects loop, and you can see it's being mirrored on here. Now what's cool about the proprietary foot switch is you can toggle the different aggression modes, okay, on each channel with that. So this is a great foot switch. It's lightweight. You can play gigs with this thing. It weighs nothing. So put some Velcro on the back, put it on your pedal board. You're switching between 4 channels, which is crazy. Another thing that Revv has had on their amps for years is the 2 different masters, okay? So for solos, you can press this button and your amp is now 10% louder, 20% louder. This button also doubles as a mute switch if you hold it down, and now it's muted, okay? So each channel is voiced differently and has its own thing going on. So it's like 4 very specific sounds in one box, and it's instantly foot switchable. So I just think it covers a lot of ground. It's a great studio amp as well in that regard. There's a built-in noise gate on the back, which you can control the threshold of the gate on the back. You can turn it on for any channel. You can set the gate up via MIDI. Okay, so if you want the gate on for channel 3 for your rhythm, it's on, right? And then when you switch over to your solos, it's off, okay? And now you're in your lead mode and the effects loop is turned on. How sick is that, right? There's a lot of different ways that you could set this amp up, and in my opinion, getting something cheap like the XSonic Airstep for 200 bucks, you can really open the world of tones that this amp has to offer, but you can also use the built-in foot switch. There is built-in reverb on this amp, which sounds fantastic. You don't have a built-in spring tank and extra tube to worry about for that. It's just a nice digital reverb that gets the job done if you don't have a bunch of pedals, okay? You can run this amp at the full 120 watts, which is insane, but you can also dial it down to 10 watts with the push of a button, which is great. And you can also self-load this amplifier if you don't want to use a speaker cabinet, okay? Which I find to be really helpful for recording. Now, to me, the icing on the cake for this amplifier and a lot of the Revv amplifiers is the built-in 2 notes torpedo captor technology. In my opinion, 2 notes is kind of the industry leader with speaker cabinet simulation. You can create your own simulations. You can put your speaker cabinet in a cathedral, okay, if you want to. Any mic setup. You can even change the power tube simulation that is going into the 2 notes output on the back. So there are left and right outputs, which I think is essential. If you're using a modern IEM rig, you want to have things in stereo. What's cool about the 2 notes technology here is you can add reverb to your sound, and you can add other effects, send that to the front of house and to your in-ear monitoring, and then you can also mic up a cabinet on stage and have more of a dry sound. So what you can do with this rig is a wet/dry blend of your tone, which I think is incredible if you're really serious about your live show. So just to sum everything up really quickly, it's a very flexible amp, lots of different features. It's easy to dial. You can see with the LEDs on the front what's going on for each channel. And it's just an awesome piece of gear. So what we're going to do now is plug in some guitars and listen to what this thing sounds like. All right, guys, I've got my trusty Kiesel Vader guitar here. It's an 8-string guitar. It doesn't have a headstock. I'm really sorry about that. But it's basically a normal tuned 6-string guitar with 2 extra low strings, passive humbucker pickups. It's just a solid guitar. It's my main axe. I use it all the time. We are running a KSR Aeros into the front of the amp. It's just a regular overdrive pedal with a few different switches and notches on there. I'll make sure I drop in a video of that while you're watching this. And into the effects loop, we've got a Line 6 HX Stomp for a little bit of chorus, reverb, and delay, which will kind of turn on and off throughout the duration of this demo. So let's listen to what the amp sounds like, just totally clean with the bridge pickup. And you could hear that reverb was on. Okay, now channel 1 has this thing called wide mode, which kind of makes all the frequencies a little bit more bold sounding. It kind of levels things out, in my opinion. Maybe even pushes it to kind of the edge of breakup. Let's try the neck pickup. All right, let's get some lush, clean stuff going on here. All right, let's move along to channel 2. Channel 2 is a low to medium gain channel. It seems to take pedals really well. So stacking overdrives, maybe a fuzz pedal, maybe a crazy distortion pedal would sound sick on this channel. But let's check out what this sounds like without the reverb on. So there's 3 different aggression modes on these next 3 channels. Green would be the low aggression, blue is medium, and red is full bore aggression. So Alright guys, it's the moment we've all been waiting for. Let's check out the purple channel. I don't have any of the extra switches turned on right now, so we're just going to try it stock for starters. Alright, let's do this. Let's turn on the KSR Aeros really quick. Listen to what that does. Sounds awesome. Now, what I love about this amp is it's fully MIDI programmable, so when I switch to channel 4, the noise gate turns off, and I don't have it set up like this yet, but what I would do is turn the effects loop on for leads. So you'd have this kind of sound. It's a much less dry and more of like a liquidy kind of lead sound. One of the other things I wanted to mention is that with the 2 notes torpedo technology, you can drastically change the sound of the amp with a flip of a switch over here. There's 6 different presets that you can store on here, and you can also edit that stuff on the go with your phone via Bluetooth. So you can connect up to your amp, just minutes before going on stage and change a couple things or dial some things in as needed. But I just wanted to show you the clean channel. If you go to preset 6, which is like the stock presets that this amp is loaded with, I've got the reverb turned off, but 2 Notes actually has their own reverb on this channel. Check this out. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me as we took a journey through the Revv G120 10th anniversary amplifier. I think this thing is awesome. It works for non-heavy genres of music too, but I think it really excels at the metal thing. And it's just a great amp, man. So many features, it's really well thought out, and I think they're giving guitar players a lot of bang for their buck with this amplifier. It's kind of a one and done situation in my opinion. So if you liked the video, please hit like, please drop a comment below. Let me know what you thought of this thing. How would you use the Revv G120 in your setup? Would this be an amp that you would get? Let me know in the comments below. And thanks to everyone at Revv for letting me check this thing out. Thank you, Derek, for letting us borrow these for a couple weeks and play on them. They're fantastic. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.